Can you say something about hitting the balance between caring for other people but not being a doormat? So a lot of the more challenging challenges we face are there not just because they're difficult and important topics, but because there's some internal conflict maybe between two goals that maybe can seem both valid in their own way. So on one hand, there certainly seems to be something important about assertiveness. Most people, if you say, well, being assertive, does that have a role? You're going to say, well, yes, it does. I have a right to be me, I have a right to share my views, and that is important. However, a lot of people also, I think, are concerned about appearing arrogant or a bit too strong. And, if you are a bit more mild-mannered, of course, there's something very nice about that as well in terms of, just a sense of ease rather than being too brash and too aggressive in the way you approach things. So this can lead to a little bit of confusion as to, well, where exactly should I be in that space? Because sometimes when we try to speak up a bit more, it just doesn't work or it just feels uncomfortable for us, and then we kind of end up backtracking a bit. But then if we backtrack a bit too much, that can also feel rather uncomfortable as well. So I think something nice to do from the very beginning when you're considering these topics is to break down the mold of the me versus other people versus the world division, and to think of it more as a system, because you and how you are affects other people, and how other people are affects you, and how we all are certainly affects the world, which in turn affects all of us. And so there's a real cycle. It's a system, and it's useful to see it in that way. And one of the consequences of seeing it systemically like that is that you start to realize that, well, actually, even if I just bite my tongue and I'm unhappy, that actually can affect other people anyway. And of course, if I'm not sharing my perspective, then I'm not contributing. And sharing your perspective and contributing to the world isn't just a privilege that you have. You could argue that it's a responsibility, because by virtue of being who you are, having had the journey that you've been on and the experiences that you've had, you have wisdom. Is it all wisdom in the world? Absolutely not. That's why we need each other. We can't claim to speak from a view from nowhere and to know all things for all people. But certainly from our experience and our journey, we've probably picked up some important things along the way. And they may well be things that other people with other perspectives just can't quite fully get. It doesn't mean that they can't still empathize, because maybe they've had different experiences, but there's a kind of a universal archetype to them. Maybe somebody's afraid of A and somebody else is afraid of B, but they both have had the experience of fear in their life, even though they're of different things. So I think when you recognize that, you start to appreciate that, yeah, you can contribute. Now, it's not that you have to, but you should certainly feel welcome to. There's an importance in your perspective and sharing it. So that, I think, is a really important starting point, because if we frame it as, oh yeah, there's the world and there's wise people and me over here trying to kind of butt in, no, it's not really that way. You are a full, active participant of the world that we live in, and your perspective absolutely matters. Now, the other bit to this, I think, is consent, because if you are biting your tongue an awful lot of the time, probably resentment is going to build up there, and that's not really good for anyone either. So there may well be times when you think to yourself, actually, yeah, I want to speak up and I want to share a particular perspective or a worldview. Or there might be times where you conclude, after a little bit of research, that, yeah, it's not worth it. Just that they're not going to listen to me, or it's not going to be effective. And sometimes you probably are better off just saving your energy or just putting your energy elsewhere, because there's thousands of debates you could have and they mightn't all be worth it. You might want to be a bit more selective. But even then, that's a better position to be in, because there's a difference between kind of wanting to say something and not, because you've chosen not to, because you don't think it's effective, versus wanting to but just stopping yourself, but still feeling that you want to. If you make the decision that, yeah, I'm not even going to go there, that can still be you being empowered. Communication isn't always about speaking. Sometimes you're going to speak, sometimes say nothing, sometimes say a little. And sometimes it's good to practice that, communicating in different ways, in different circumstances, and just seeing how it works out. Now, anytime there's a difficulty in assertiveness, it is important to risk assess. And that's why I say I'm speaking generally here. If this is green and you're just chatting amongst friends, it's green on the traffic light, carry on, no problems. If it's red and there may be harm that can come from speaking out, then get support. That's a different situation. If it's in the amber, though, where it's safe but it's just uncomfortable, that's a good area to play with, to try different styles of communication and to see how they work for you. Another interesting twist on this as well is if you do find yourself very often being there for other people, you're a caring person and you like to support other people, you may want to continue to do that. You might think, well, sometimes I need to stop and practice what I preach. That's important. But you may actually want to continue caring for other people. But an important thing is on your terms, on the basis at least of your skills. Because a big part of the problem here is when you're stretching too much. But if you're operating within your skills and your interests, that can also feel much more comfortable. So you might, for example, say, no, I can't help you at that. However, I'd be happy to help you at this, which is within my area. Now, even then, it should probably be reciprocal, but you're already in a much better place when you're bringing it back to your home territory of what your skills are. If you find yourself reaching outside of your skills and your interests, well then, it's somebody else's help that person needs. It's probably not yours, so that mightn't be too helpful. So prioritizing, I think, is one of the key things here, because there are over 7 billion people in the world, and you can't do what every single one of them wants you to do. You got to make some choices. So you might as well start from you to some extent, question who you are and what matters to you, and then choose who of those over 7 billion people that you actually want to support and help. And the other interesting thing is you may want to help them, not just by doing stuff for them, but by setting an example for them. Because sometimes actually doing the work for them is disempowering them. Whereas if you were to really look after yourself, you set a good example to others as to how they can do that for themselves, which probably gives you less work to do and makes the world a better place. So then maybe you can focus in on the people who really need your help a little bit more. It doesn't have to be perfect with any of this, but a little reflection, I think that can be useful. Do keep the comments coming on that. Have you any experience with hitting that balance between being a doormat, maybe not being assertive enough, and on the other hand, maybe being too assertive or just not being worth your while? How to find that balance? Do share your experience. If you found this valuable, do like, subscribe, and share. And what's your experience? Do you have any questions or topic suggestions? You can contribute in the comments, on social media using #bodymindself, or at jfl.com.